Hello, everybody. This is the Minority Authority brand channel. The Authority for short, because that's a mouthful. I originally came up with the idea for this channel because I was reading a lot. I've been reading in terms of black history, I've been reading for the better part of 10 or 11 years. And I was reading so much, I would go from one book to the next one that I wasn't being able to retain the information. And what do you do with information that you can't retain? You pass it on to people who would benefit from it. So that's where I got the idea from with this podcast. The first episode that I wanted to speak about tonight is titled Little Lies in Caucasian Comfort. Bill Maher is a guy who does an HBO show or HBO special. I think it's on once a week. And he touched on wokeness or political correctness. And I want to speak on that. Maher brought up a new term, presentism, which means judging everyone from the past by today's standards. It's the belief that people who lived 100, 500, or 1,000 years ago really should have known better. Who doesn't have moments from their past that makes them cringe? He adds, liking the behaviors of an adult of 100, 500, or 1,000 years ago to toddlers today who ate dirt or dug up their noses. He adds that everyone that could afford one had a slave, including people of color. The way people talk about slavery today, you would think it was a uniquely American thing that was invented in 1619. Slavery throughout history has been the rule, not the exception. Who do you think gathered the slaves from the interior of Africa to sell to slave traders? Africans, who also kept their own slaves. And the capacity for cruelty is a human thing, not a white thing, he says. Presentism, he concurs with the person who coined the term, is a way to congratulate yourself about being better than George Washington because you have a gay friend and he didn't. George Washington, by the way, probably did have a gay friend, but just didn't know it. Gay is nothing new. The commercialization of gay is, but that's a whole nother issue. And my response to that is, a different period in history is no excuse for any lapse of a mental capacity or a lapse in morality. In fact, I've heard that people today are less religious than they were in previous generations. As a society, we tend to confuse technological advancement with being better people. Yes, we've created ways to communicate faster, but now no one knows how to hold an actual talking conversation. You can get on TikTok and watch funny 5-second reels all day and atrophy your ability to understand a joke that builds. Stand-up comedians are what those people are called. Patience and delayed gratification should still be coveted virtues. Yes, we have nuclear weapons, but we are better people because we don't intend to use them. What makes us better? The endless wars we've been in, the military support we're providing to the enemy of our enemies. We are not better people. Where am I going with this? Slavery. Yes, slavery was the rule and not the exception, but, and this is a big one, American slavery was the only institution of slavery predicated on a racial hierarchy, which has been more of a stain on humans than slavery alone. I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. Indentured servants had someone pay their way to America and agreed to work off the wages. Have you ever met a descendant of an indentured servant? No, because they first volunteered, and second, and most important, they were not picked for their ideal characteristics. It wasn't race-based. Slavery, which I am likely offspring of, they did not volunteer, and they were believed to be more suited for slavery. Why? Partially because God decreed it so. I'd like to read a passage I found from the vice president of the Confederacy during the Civil War. Our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea of the equality of the races. That's the first sentence. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition, This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world based upon this great physical, physiological, and moral truth. Actually, philosophical, I'm sorry. Philosophical and moral truth. The truth has been slow in the process of its development, like all other truths in the various departments of science, so it's a science now. He adds that those in support of abolition were warring with principle and were attempting to make things equal, which the Creator has made unequal. That's the part about God decreed it so. On another occasion, a South Carolina senator said, in all social systems, there must be a class to do the menial jobs, to perform the drudgery of life. That is, a class requiring but a low order of intellect and but little skill. So they dumb and they don't have any skills. It requires, or its requisites are vigor, docility, and fidelity. Such a class you must have or would not have the other class which leads progress, civilization, and refinement. It constitutes the very mud seal of society and of political government. And you might as well attempt to build a house in the air as to build either the one or the other, except on this mud seal. So basically you need slaves in order to have people who are better off. Fortunately for the South, she found a race adapted to the purpose to her hand, a race inferior to her own, but eminently qualified in temper, in vigor, in docility, in capacity to stand the climate, to answer all her purpose. We use them for our purpose, and we call them slaves. Do you think Africans from the interior felt the same way? The interior that Bill Maher is referencing. Do you think people will act any differently today, given the opportunity for windfall profits and devoid of the fear of cancel culture? When you steal a people from their native lands and force them to work without pay, not only have you extracted income and future wealth from them and future generations, you have stolen their identities, their sense of who they are, cultural practices, rituals, to bend them to conform to a lifestyle of subservience just to line your pockets. As Kendrick might ask, how much do $1 cost? More on that in a future episode. If there's anything that sums up the cognitive dissonance of racism in America, the great brother James Baldwin had to say it best. He said, America is a civilization that is so pathetic that a white man's masculinity depends on the denial of a black man's. We are no different than we were 500, 100, or 1,000 years ago. And if we're not challenging our own reasoning, we're no better than we were in our 20s, 30s, or 40s. We are only telling ourselves little lies. A lie of omission, but nonetheless, little lies for Caucasian comfort. So that's my first podcast. I am on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Under both of them, I'm under Minority Authority brand. If you like what you heard, like the page, please, or like this, subscribe. And I appreciate you watching the video, and I'll be back next week with something new. So follow me if you will. Thank you, and that's my time.